FrightFest Television. Here we are with Peter Strickland, the director of one of my favourite films of the year, Berberian Sound Studio. It's all about giallo, it's all about Italy, it's all about the 70s, and that's why I love it so much. Thanks, Peter. I mean, how many giallo films did you watch? Is the first question to actually get this together.
Well, first of all, it started with the soundtracks, because I'd only seen one in the 90s, The Bird of the Crystal Plumage. I saw it on VHS, but then the soundtracks kind of came on these Mondo Morricone compilations and so on. And then I got back into giallo from that, and obviously caught up with Bava. There was a great Bava season at the NFT in 1998, I think. They had like 2 months of Bava
That was
films.
me, I programmed that.
Okay, Blood and Black Lace.
It all comes back to me, you realise that. Anyway.
Yeah, but that was a fantastic period. I mean, that's the first year I really got into giallo, and then from then on, it was, excuse my awful pronunciation, Martino, Fulci, but Argento,
obviously,
of course.
yeah.
So, but I guess Berberian mainly came from the soundtracks, which were so incredibly lush and romantic, but advanced as well. They're so incongruous compared to the films. And I guess Nicolai, Frizzi, Gizzi, Ortolani, Morricone, of course, and Moderna, who did the Death Laid an Egg soundtrack. He came from this avant-garde background. And I guess that was the starting point, where his studio, working with Luciano Berio and his wife, Kathy Berberian, they're all connected to John Cage and Stockhausen. But there was the other side, the kind of the giallo side, where they felt academia maybe wasn't listening to what they were doing. But somehow they went even more adventurous because they kind of felt freed up. So I guess Berberian kind of came from this no man's land, this kind of sonic no man's land between high art, academia, and exploitation. And I guess I wanted to kind of swim in this world for, 90 minutes. But also, I guess it was, again, this kind of no man's land between extreme horror on the screen and just this kind of pantomime element of men smashing watermelons, and where are we in relation to these two opposites? I guess it's all about opposites, that film. And even how we shot it, it's all about analog. We shot it on digital. We did the soundtrack on digital. We constructed an Italian studio with Italians in East London, so it's all about opposites.
Was there ever a point when you were going to actually show any of the equestrian vortex, or did you actually make sure you just had the flickering on their faces?
Yeah, I mean, it was always going to be the flickering only. To be honest, I hadn't come up with the title sequence. That was Julian House who suggested it.
That's
I thought,
absolutely brilliant. I love that.
He knows his stuff inside out. He knows his stuff. And I was really excited when he mentioned that. Because I thought, okay, the title sequence, we can kind of get away with it. It doesn't ruin it conceptually too much. And I love the confusion. We were going to have it at the very beginning to confuse the audience, that they maybe came into the wrong film.
Okay.
But also it was important to give a flavour of how those films were made in terms of how international they were. Actors from the former Yugoslavia, from Germany, from Hungary, from America. And obviously that goes into how these soundtracks were made, whether it was all either an Italian clean dub or an English dub. But in terms of the violence on screen, I felt it just would have been wrong to do that. I thought the whole film was about sound, and it's very. I think with horror, it feels, for me anyway, personally, that one really can't go any further. The only way to go would be to go back and just show nothing and see what happens. I guess we knew it wouldn't be scary, but how to unsettle an audience, how to confound them. And sound can be so powerful. And I mean, even listening to records by Whitehouse or Suicide, it can really just transform the way your blood works. So I guess I wanted to kind of push that to the foreground a bit more, really.
Did it take you very long to write this script?
It took me a long time to start it, just to get into it. I kind of knew the middle bit, the ending, but just to get the exposition, the information out, that took quite a while. But once I got going, it was fairly quick, and subsequent drafts became quite joyful to write. There's actually a lot of fun, which is not always the case when you write. It can be really difficult, but this one, for some reason, it kind of came out quite naturally. I guess there were a lot of elements that excited me personally. and also on some other level, it's about work. We've all been there, office politics, and I guess living in Europe, you've seen how things work. But being half Greek, especially, I know how nepotism works. And
you actually
corruption.
captured the whole. I've seen Dario dub a lot of films in Phonorama, which is the big one that he ever uses, and I was never around in the 70s. But seriously, you got exactly the whole trying to get the expenses out of people, which I've actually physically tried to do. And I mean, and the way they're very sexist about with the girls. I mean, it's unbelievable. Even today, it's unbelievable. You actually capture that atmosphere dead on, and it hasn't really changed. That's the sad thing.
I mean, it's really weird for me, not being Italian, not really knowing the country. Really want to be careful how I do that. If somebody says that, then great. I'm really glad it's captured something. But I guess it came from other experiences I've had in other parts of Europe, and again, being half Greek, knowing how things work in Southern Europe and so on.
So is Tonya then a relation? Is that what she
No. I mean, in the film, she plays a Greek speaking Italian.
Yeah.
We were very careful because I think two of the actresses, Tonya and Fatma, who plays Sylvia, she was in Cotland Varga, my first film, and I really loved the way she looked, and I really wanted her to be in Berberian, and I wrote Sylvia for her. But it's very important not to just. They both speak Italian. But I didn't want to kind of be fake about it, and there are references to them being foreigners in the film. But yeah, I guess it's interesting. I think people who have seen the film so far in the UK pick up on other things in terms of the visceral quality and the sound and so on. But I guess showing it to friends of mine in Southern Europe and so on, they really pick up on the expense claim stuff. And whereas the English who see it just think, come on, this is like are you being served or something in Italy?
Par for the course, really.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to talk about Toby Jones. I mean, how did you convince him to do it? I mean, what did he see in it for him?
I guess, deep down, he loves a certain type of film which is more personal and more intimate, perhaps. So, he does these big films in America, but he's always been into cinema as a fan, I guess, and he responded to the script quite well. He did a radio play on Foley way back, I think, in 2000. So there was some personal interest for him, and I think he's had some experience in Dorking as well. So he was really into it. It was actually very easy to. He was very explicit about wanting to do the film. It just took some time to come to him to find the right person for Gilderoy. It took a long time to find someone who could inhabit that inner world, was being to kind of carry a film, to be engaging for 90 minutes, to be engaging by being non-engaging is a real challenge for an actor and a director. And luckily, he's so good, he can just leave it up to him.
I mean, what do you expect the audience? I mean, I'm interested because it is he is falling apart. I mean, is he psychologically being sort of like damaged by what he's seeing and having to go through, because he's never seen such shocking images before, and that's actually what sort of like really like throwing him off balance from his like little Dorking nature, documentary. Is that exactly what you're saying? What are you?
Yeah, I wouldn't say. I guess the film, in general, it was. I know it sounds like a cop out, but it's like a meditation on sound, and I think within that there are certain ambiguities and places you could conclude. I never saw it in a concrete term that this is the character losing his mind, going mad. Right. It never felt.
So the switch to him being subtitled there.
But that's also a reference to those films. I was never lucky enough to see them in the cinema, but I heard stories that the reels would just switch sometimes, and on DVD they switch.
Oh, I see.
And I just I love that quality. I love that quality. It's so confounding and incongruous that it suddenly just switches language to English or Italian, whichever one you've watched it in the beginning.
But that was sometimes the way the sales agents just sort of sold the films, and literally they were like by the yard, they would just throw them on, and so one country got one, as exactly as you say, with certain scenes with. Now I get it. I understand that now completely. I thought so. You're not actually saying anything sort of like subversive.
There is that, but there was more than that. So I think it's a really, really difficult one when you're writing, a script which is ambiguous. You got to be very careful not to do it as a pose. And I think it has to be very intuitive. You might not necessarily have the answers for it. I think when Chris and I, when I wrote the script, and obviously the next level when you edit the film with Chris Dickens, we spoke a lot about it, and should we have concrete answers for these things? And it's quite important not to. As long as we felt there were 2 or 3 possible outcomes, and I think going a bit bananas could be one of them. But I guess there was an element of a kind of spiritual corruption from being desensitized to all this violence, and I think part of that is when he feels he can torture the character at the end by proxy. He's too much of a coward to do it, to go to her face and make her cry. But also that was my kind of bastard nature with the audience, because I think with horror, you never directly feel, you always vicariously feel that character's suffering, you never directly feel it. But with sound, you as the audience your ears are being pummeled the same way as that character's ears are being pummeled at the very end of the film. But then again, you can't do it too much in the film because you don't want to give the audience tinnitus. So it's this kind of fine line, really.
I mean, you got great reviews in Edinburgh. You're going to get great reviews for it when it actually opens next week, I think. I mean, what is the audience for this one? Because when I was watching this, I thought, what is the audience for this movie? Because, I mean, are you expecting an audience to go in and not get the references to the whole Jallow Brigade?
Yeah.
And is that what you prefer, that people don't go in there? I mean, is our audience, that they're watching it right this minute, your total nightmare? Because they're going to say to you, you got that wrong and that's not right.
I think I guess today I'm pretty nervous. I think with fans of Jallow and fans of sound, who know their stuff inside out, someone's going to wag their finger, definitely. I mean, you can't help it. When you make a film, you're going to get something wrong. But at the same time, I don't want the film to be forbidding for an audience who don't get the references. It's not important. I think when I used to watch Greenaway films, sometimes I'd feel, I just don't get this. I can't enter the film because I don't get the references. So it's more playful than that. I think if you don't get references to Trevor Wishart or Fulci, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't.
So you don't see that as being crucial.
Not at all. Not at all. It colours it if you come back to it and watch it again. It's there for me a lot of time. There's so many things that only I will get, like personal references. In terms of I recorded certain people chewing pumpkin seeds and stuff like that, which is. So it goes. I think a lot of these things you do it as a filmmaker just because it's fun and. So if you don't get, the Colatina reference or whatever, it just really doesn't matter. Or the references to Death Laid an Egg, all kinds of things. That this.
You picked one of the weirdest films to actually reference with Death Laid an Egg. But that is one of the very most unusual Jallow films of all time.
There's a pop-up one as well.
Yeah,
but what's interesting about that film is that it relates to Dorking because of the Dorking chicken, which comes from Milan.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's this weird Dorking.
So Death Laid an Egg is
Italian connection. Yeah. So.
Was the director of that Giulio
I think, and Moderna did the soundtrack.
Oh, right.
And that was his most kind of avant-garde piece of work, which is really weird.
Even today, somebody should do an actual book on that film because it's actually one of those movies that is just so indescribable when you tell people what it's about.
It is a weird one, isn't it?
Yeah, and then when you think that was called Plucked in America, which was the American title, which is why I'm going to finish this off by saying the Equestrian Vortex. I mean, that is such a typically Italian title that will then suddenly get translated into something like Slasher and Killer or something.
The Crystal Plumage, that was called the Gary Murders when it came out.
Only in England.
Okay.
It was always burned with the Crystal Plumage everywhere else.
But why call it the Gary Murders? It's such a great title, the original one.
Barry Jacobs, who actually released it here, actually told me he just wanted to make it the blandest possible title because he thought Bird with the Crystal Plumage was too arty for an English crowd. It was only going to play a second half of a double bill with groupie girls, so he didn't care about where it was going to go. Because
I first heard of it in 1992 at the Scala Cinema. I didn't go. It was Stereolab were playing live in Huggy Bear, and they played the selected film was the Bird with the Crystal Plumage, and I thought, what a eerie title. And just that, I didn't know about Argento then really, so that really kind of sucked me in. And then I saw it on VHS, but titles are kind of. Yeah, but I guess animals. You can go on with the scorpion's tail and the black, belly of the tarantula.
Yeah, black belly of the tarantula.
And just.
That's what I love about the Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward and all these fantastic titles.
Edwige Fenech. Yes, yeah.
You see, you know your stuff.
Your Vice is a locked
room.
Yes,
your Vice is a locked room, and only I have the key. That's
Don't Torture a Duckling as well.
That's one of my all-time favourites.
They had great titles. They really did.
but then they became like strip nude for your killer when they got sort of like.
Oh, that's the Shameless call it that now, don't they?
Yeah. So just last thing, Berberian Sound Studio. I mean, you say Kathy Berberian is like.
There's a reference to her, yes.
Right.
Because there's a track by her and Luciano Berio, who were working in Moderna Studio, who did Death Laid an Egg. They did a track called Visage. This is a 17-minute piece of howling, and I just thought, what if that were to be in a horror film? What if that were the soundtrack? It's a completely different association. And I guess it goes back to Penderecki, when people hear it on record and they think, no, this is difficult music. But when you hear it in The Shining, you just get it. You know what it is. And that's what I find fascinating with horror, the two opposites. And again, with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, if you heard that Music Concrete soundtrack in a concert hall, people would call it a masterpiece. But because people associate it with this kind of scuzzy horror film, they just kind of...
Well, Morricone's best themes underline the most violent images
I
of
agree.
all.
I agree.
I mean, you've only got to look at like Four Flies on Grey Velvet, most beautiful music in the world, and it's a person's head being cut off in a car crash. So it's
that one. That's a great one. That one. Yeah,
so it's the opera of violence, really. It goes back to that whole Sergio Leone thing. And I think we better stop now. Thank you very much, Peter Strickland.
Thanks.